Welcome to the Invisible Soldiers podcast, the go-to for Black voices in advertising. I'm Corey.
I'm Rebecca.
And today we're honored to be joined by Sam Bonds, SVP Group Creative Director at Barkley. He's the epitome of professionalism, a man with tremendous character and an award-winning creative I'm happy to call a friend. Sam, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. You guys are having some great conversations, so glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, for sure, man. This has been a long time coming. We've been talking about this. You are now in what year? What are we, year 26?
Oh, man, you're just going to go right at it, huh?
Yeah, bro. Yeah,
this has got to be 26. I think you and I came out of Portfolio Center in 98, 99, something like that. Yeah.
So let's just go way back. As young Sam, what was there a talent or a skill set or something that you had that you thought that might one day launch you in advertising?
You know what? That's a great question. And I happen to be in DC right now. I grew up in DC and I grew up in an artistic household. But vocal arts. So both of my parents are singers. My dad's a vocal coach all my life, choral conductor. My mom's a soloist. They're both classically trained singers. So that's it. That's the world that's the kind of culture and cultural community that I grew up in. But it was never me. I'd never been a performer. I always, for as long as I can remember, I was an artist. I drew. That was just my thing. That was just my joy. It was my safe place. If my mom was looking for me, she couldn't find me. Chances are I was in my room drawing. So just to answer that question, it had always been visual arts. I was never even aware. It just didn't connect for me, the idea of advertising. So no, I didn't discover that until I graduated from college.
You went to a performing arts high school, though, right?
How
does drawing take you there when you talk about really not being this performer or whatever? How does that lead you there?
Okay, no, another great question. I'm guessing I should stop saying that because y'all got plenty of great questions. That's the whole point of it. My little foray into music, and I'll bounce everything off of music just because that was how deeply entrenched my family was in the musical community. In middle school, I was excited because I was playing the saxophone like we all do at some point in our school career, pick up a little drum or horn. So I was playing the saxophone. I was digging it. I was horrible, but I was loving it. And I thought, cool. My dad, who was teaching at Duke Ellington School of the Arts, by that time for well over a decade, but in the vocal music department, he was there. So I figured, all right, wow, I definitely want to go for art. So I'll audition for that. And maybe I can keep playing the saxophone. But eventually I got in art and they were like, nah, we're serious about this art thing. You're going to do either or. I probably wouldn't have gotten into the music department anyway, but I got into the art department, and so that's kind of I call that the kind of the foundation of my artistic life. That's where I understood or learned that artists can be that can be a career, that can be your life. You can do that. You hear about artists, but you don't necessarily, as a kid, connect the dot that their life is that's their job. That's how they pay for their living and home and all that. So that's where I discovered it. And it was an intense and beautiful experience.
Did you think when you were moving into your college years or preparing for college and you went to Howard University, just kidding, but I'm thinking of going from art school into the HBCU, especially I refer to it as the golden era because I, landed at Hampton University in 95. So probably around the same time. But were you thinking about your creative exploration when you decided to move into the college space? How was the connective tissue there?
Yeah. So my high school was really good about introducing us to colleges and universities that were more or less conservative conservatories of art. So they were really art schools. So they did that, and I was aware of those schools, and I only applied to two schools, Howard University and School of Visual Arts. They both gave me some money, and School of Visual Arts is in New York, and I was scared of it. I wasn't ready. Little DC, we cool and everything, but we ain't New York. And so I just wasn't ready for that. And I ended up going to Howard for that reason. And definitely art was going to be my focus. I couldn't see a life doing anything other than art. I wasn't an academic kid, not math, not science. I wasn't an athlete. It just had to be art. So at that point, when I was choosing a major, I remember talking to my dad, and I was like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to study painting," because I'd done a lot of painting to that point, and he was like, "Nah, you need to study something that's going to make you some money, something you can have a job at, a career at," and so I ended up studying graphic design.
Okay.
That's the route I took.
And then after undergrad, me and you crossed paths.
Mm-hmm.
The Portfolio Center in Atlanta, which at the time, it has since been bought out by Miami Ad School, but at the time it was the #1 ad school in the nation. Talk about that journey, because when I pulled up, I saw a lot of white kids. and I walked into school and I saw one black. I said, "At least it's one," and it was you.
How did you even find it? I like both of you, to be honest with you, because I was an ad major. It was a few majors before I finally found like marketing and advertising. And for our younger folks who can't imagine what life is like before the internet and social media, a lot of things had to either be brought to your attention or you had to be in the right time at the right place. And somebody had mentioned to me about VCU. I kind of heard about portfolio centers. But how did that and I'd love to hear that too, Corey, like how did you even come up on that?
Corey, I want to hear yours first, and I'll tell mine for sure.
Well, at the time, Lewis Williams, who was, I think at that time, a group creative director at Leo Burnett, he was very familiar with the school because he had a bunch of people who worked for him who went there. So Lewis and my dad were really good friends. So when I came out, I thought I was just going to start applying, send out resumes. And I was like, it don't work that way. So I started chatting with Lewis, and Lewis introduced me to some creatives who had just come out. Matter of fact, Mark Graham, I don't know if you know him. He's a creative director, but Mark went to University of Missouri with me. So he was a Mizzou alum. So I got to meet him and a couple of other cast, and it was like, yeah, y'all should go down there or whatever. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So that's what I did.
Nice. Mine was a little even less direct, because I know your dad was in the business. I after graduating with a graphic design degree and not being ready to leave DC, still living with my parents, right out of school, I ended up taking a job as a graphic designer for a management consulting firm. As you can imagine, most of like the big companies in DC, especially like downtown, K Street, Georgetown, they have contracts with the government. Most of them, they're supported by the government in some way. And so this company had done a lot of work with the Pentagon. So a lot of the stuff that I was doing, supporting graphic design for, was like either navy blue, olive green, or yellow, just kind of these military palettes. Yep. And it was just killing me. Like I literally was just slowly every day dying. And I happened to be talking to a friend of mine who graduated a few years before me. His name is Chris Curry. And I always tell people this. I need to tell that brother this because I haven't talked to him in a while.
Mm-hmm.
But
I know Chris.
Yeah, he had been in touch with one of our professors at Howard, and I don't know how they came upon the conversation, but she introduced him to Portfolio Center, and then he'd gone down there and subsequently introduced me and another good friend of mine to Portfolio Center, and and Pooch James, he told both of us. James Logan, he told me and James about Portfolio Center, and he said, both of y'all need to get down there, get a place together, and go to this school. And because I'm loving this career, I love the stuff that we work on. I love the stuff that we wear. We don't have to, wear ties and all that. And so that was obviously a draw for us at that time. But that was my way in.
Very cool. So now you're out of school, and I remember that spring '99. Everybody, because when people start getting hired from your graduating class, every time somebody get hired, the pressure starts to build up. And I just saw the names coming off the board, and it was like once he got to be like about half the class had jobs. Mm-hmm. It got a little weird. So where were you in? I don't remember exactly when you got it.
Yeah, you know why you don't remember? Because I was almost married with a kid.
Oh, well, that's true too. Yeah.
So yeah. While I was at Portfolio Center, two major things happened. My daughter was born. I met my wife, my still wife, and we had our daughter, our firstborn, while I was in school. And the other thing is, I'd had an internship at Fitzgerald in Atlanta.
Okay.
Around the time where Fitzgerald and McCann merged. And that was just that internship kind of pushed me into the industry. Like they eventually hired me as kind of like full-time freelance. So it gave me an opportunity to get some reps, to kind of get a portfolio with some real things in it. And then, having been with my wife, I was now okay and ready to go to New York. And so, I just kind of sent some books to New York. I think the school hit me to a couple of opportunities there, and I ended up sending some books there. Got a gig at a small place.
That's wild. So my first job out of Hampton was McCann Erickson here in Detroit. Super Mad Men. Like when I left Hampton in '99, one, I had like a cute short little afro. Two, when I got in the building, not a speck of color anywhere. And I was completely shell-shocked because I had just left Virginia, DMV, 90. I mean, all the music that was happening during then, it was such a shock to go into those spaces. I'd gone to predominantly white high school, so not completely foreign. I too also got married, and on the almost, it's 26 when I had my daughter now, who's 22. But I'd love to hear about your first experiences, or your first on oh wow, coming out of Howard, you're married now, you're this black man, and
tall black man. Sam is 6'3". So not just tall, deep voice, the whole nine. So it's the thing.
Yeah, what was that like? Especially because Corey and I, we still reminisce about what it was like to walk in the hallways, because kids don't really know about that now because work is so different.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll even go back to that first gig that I took out of undergrad. It was just shell shock because, Howard, HBCUs are, I won't say coddling, but more so nurturing in a lot of ways. Like they're taking care of kids. They're connecting with, they know how valuable that experience is for kids. A lot of the administrators and educators there. So, and not that I hadn't been exposed to the broader world, culturally, racially, and all that, but it was different because I moved like a city kid. I spoke with a DC accent, and so I just felt kind of weird because I knew I was that way, but it was a small company, so there were one or two older black folks who kind of looked out for me, helped me with that transition. Now, when I got into advertising, I feel like Portfolio Center had prepped me just a little bit for that dynamic and my otherness, so to speak, because there were just so few of us in the school. So my expectations, going into that internship with Fitzgerald and then into the industry, they were set. And I feel like I navigated. I didn't necessarily feel too lost. Looking back now, I know what I didn't get. I know what, I know what cavities developed, and I see the places that I could have, been nurtured within. I see the conversations that weren't had with me. I see my fault in not seeking those things. Not fault, but I know that was half of that process is you kind of, putting yourself out there and reaching and raising your hand to get that kind of support and mentorship and such. But yeah, I'm not sure if I answered the question, but that was my experience for sure.
No, I think that was good. There is a tightrope, though, that we walk where it's about developing a voice, but then also not stepping on toes, not coming across as intimidating. I had to learn the power of my voice, just like the raw physical power, and what that does to people, and even when people see your poker face kind of crumble and they start to see your emotions and all of those things is something that we had to figure out. Can you talk about that aspect of it?
Yeah. I had a few, what I would say, just moments, that we all, I think, professionally have, where it's just like an interaction that was just off. Sometimes they're funny and we can laugh them off. Other times they're really grating. There are interactions where it feels as if your presence, and I think you were alluding to it, Corey, in that you talked about your voice and your stature. You feel those things being perceived and taken in. And it's, they fall into the category of micro, the micro, whether it's an aggression or whether it's an interaction, whether it's a moment or just a hiccup where that stuff is taken in. And you are constantly aware of, I'm constantly aware of my size. Like you said, I'm 6'3". I'm constantly aware of, my blackness, and I'm doing work, not always consciously, but I'm doing work to make sure we cool, right? Because in the U.S. we are not necessarily taught, not to go too far off, but we are all operating from the same culturally educational playbook, and it simply communicates different things to us. And for a lot of folks, it communicated danger around Black people.
Yeah, well, it's just weird because we would navigate the two spaces, right? If you were in a club in Detroit, you naturally know how to make yourself bigger, right? And then you go into these rooms and now you're trying to tone it down. It's a weird thing, man. Yeah.
Or the need to feel to bring levity.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like as a tool. And that it's part of our language. It's part of the, we talk about code switching, but part of the code switching is simply gestures, physical gestures. It's a smile. It's, humor and charm and personality. So a lot of code switching.
Yes, I call that disarming.
Yeah, exactly.
Your not your opponent, but in terms of the communication style, kind of getting everybody to come to center so that they can actually hear and engage without having to, with the bias that shows up. And in that, especially because all three of us have done both the general market, or we also had a guest on that called them AWAs, all white agencies. She was great. Or multicultural agencies. Can you talk a little bit about kind of your experience walking that tightrope between both of those spaces?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. My first, major agency outside of that internship I mentioned with Fitzgerald was GSD&M in Austin, Texas. And when I got there in 2000, I was probably one of two or three Black creatives, probably the department of 60 creatives. And so there was, just kind of used to it by that time. And you feel a bit invisible. You don't, yeah, hence our conversation here. You just feel invisible. I didn't regularly feel put down, or I didn't encounter a ton of direct kind of conflicts. I did experience one that was so uber direct and ultimately foul. And I'll on the back end of me telling you, I'll talk about how I interpret who kind of inflicted this kind of moment on me. So, and y'all stop me if ever I'm going on too far. So, there at one point I'd gone to my desk one day, sat down, I'd walked away and then come back, and there was a Confederate flag, like a toy Confederate flag that had been left on my desk. And the crazy thing is, growing up in DC, I didn't really have a lot of interactions with the Confederate flag. I didn't even have a whole lot of education around it. Even having gone to Howard, we didn't like the deep historical relationship or education that we got. There wasn't a whole lot of centering specifically on our understanding of the flag itself. And so I wasn't immediately like, oh, that's not how I took it. The thing was, when the two white creatives, turned the corner, laughing and giggling, saying, and you know what I mean? Like having done it and trying to see my reaction, that's when it became, wow, that was a kind of joke or thing you wanted to do. Like, man, that was kind of, and these were folks that I felt like, yeah, they cool, sure, we get a beer here and there, we cool, but that thing never, and I never went back to the guy. To this day, we're super cordial. And had I told him, had I explained to him, like, whoa, you really think about what you just did or what you did years ago, it would break him apart. Because I know what I know about him and where he grew up. I'm sure he saw a ton of that. I'm sure that was, he had a long kind of meal of that type of culture and language and references. And I know that was just kind of the playbook for him. And it wasn't like, I don't think he meant me trauma. But I also think that these are things that unfold, and nobody means anything, but they're playing into a playbook that, is just that traumatic. So that was that.
But you didn't take the bait though, which is cool, because I think we all have had those moments. I love that Chappelle sketch, "Keeping It Real Goes Wrong," right? Because that shit was so real to me, man. Because you can be. I had luckily, this happened at a time when I was out of town, because I was young and emotional and like riding for black shit. Like, and I might have done something stupid, but like I had a radio spot that went through proofing. And I get this email, and the proofer has taken every word off of my script. And it was just a regular script, but every ing word.
Oh my God.
They changed that shit to like N apostrophe. Like, so they ebonicized my script
for you,
for me. Yeah, because they knew I was black, right? And luckily, I was in LA, because when I read it, I was hot, right? By the time I got back to work, it was 3.5 weeks later. I forgot about this shit, so nothing ever happened. But I would like to think that I would have had the emotional maturity to handle it if I'd been in the building, but I don't know.
Well, we talked about that. We've had some Gen Z and like millennials on the show too, to talk a little bit about how they manage those experiences, because I feel like we grew up in a space where it was like, I could get triggered by this flag, but I'm gonna keep this job. So it's like,
and that's real.
And that's real. And I think that it's also fair. Like at the end of the day, you could lose your stuff over this and, and come to blows with these two gentlemen. But at the end of the day, you would lose because that's just how it works. But, these younger folks, and we've talked a little bit about it. Like, I don't know if it's bravery. I don't know if it's like the programming of it all, or just knowing that like when they do that, they're just so ridiculously dumb that I just don't have that energy
That was it.
Right.
That was ultimately it for me. There are folks there, that I was working with who, had they done it, because I had such more of a sense of where they were coming from. Had they done it, I think I'd have taken it a whole other way. These guys were young. They were, a little bit younger than me at that time, and I was young. And so I really just felt like they were playing off of a script that they'd grown up with, and just to kind of see what happened. This was their turn to kind of like, do some stupid stuff that they'd seen before. I do have another one I always like to share, just a little micro moment, and time has made me think of this interaction so differently. The agency was pitching a big old telecom. And at one point, the conversation around broadening the audience and making sure that we wrap our arms around a multicultural community and for what that market is worth. And there was an email sent from a higher up in the agency to the pitch team the email was called Blacking It Up.
No.
Whoa. Damn.
The title of the email was Blacking It Up. Now, the content of the email really, in essence, said, hey, a friend of mine tells me that, when Black people go out on the town, and put on all the studs, it's called bling or blinging. And essentially, this email was about insights and how they could potentially partner with, Wingo, who at the time they were talking about Bob Wingo, who Corey and I worked for. And here's the thing. The email itself doesn't even, it's not in and of itself, other than that title being a little weird. There wasn't anything in it that was like racist. It was just a consideration of an audience that they weren't familiar with. But one of the people sent me this email like, hey, maybe for you to hold on to. And at first I was like, oh yeah, thanks. Oh, that's messed up. They're talking about us like this. But eventually I understood that was the assault. The idea to send it to me, the idea to take this and not really processing this as a poorly written, a unsophisticated expression of the need to understand an audience and the opportunity to create a business partnership. Like, they only saw those trigger things and decided to send it to me.
To see if they could start more fires. That is real. Yes, I love your perspective and your just the reflection on it about where the trauma and who really threw the grenade.
Yeah.
Because you were absolutely right. Like, not all things are as blatant as a Confederate flag or like a noose, right? You see, those are all playbook things. I've seen it, right? But that in itself, wow.
And generationally, our generation was expected to eat it, right? Like no matter what it was, we were expected to eat it. Mm-hmm. So, me and Tam had the pleasure of working together, and our offices were side by side, Rebecca, like for years, right? And it was a great it was like having a therapist.
It really was,
because Sam would get pissed and come in my office and sit down for 20 minutes. I get pissed, go to his office, and he always had my answers, and I always had answers for him.
100.
But one of the things that really started to really pique our curiosity was when we started dealing with a new generation of creatives. that was a lot more sensitive and emotional. And I mean, we started seeing tears in creative reviews, and we were like scratching our head, like
regularly.
Up, like, am I mean now? I'm like, what's going on here? So, can you talk about the challenge of managing both millennial and Gen Zers, in your management career?
I learned a lot. Like I view that when the time that you and I were working at Sanders Wingo, Corey, I learned how to be a creative director. I learned how to be a manager. I learned how to be just emotionally kind of aware and sensitive, and also just appreciating, like you said, that millennials and Gen Z, they're just a different animal. And so knowing at the end of the day, I had to get creative done. I had to get ideas out. I just had to figure out how to navigate these personalities who were so foreign to me, en masse, who couldn't necessarily take direct feedback or feedback that did not take into account their feelings. But also people who were not prepared to, like, okay, this hurts. This is going to happen at a regular, interval. I need to work through it. I remember going to bosses, and hearing stuff that made my eyes water. I remember that. And I remember also having a conversation with myself, like, all right, like, we can't keep that up. like that, that's got to stop. So it just caused me to, like, really just, I think the awareness alone made things easier, but it never really made it, like, go away. It was still annoying. It still is annoying because, from time to time it still happens, but it made me sensitive. It made me, and having had kids myself who were older than most of my peers' kids, I felt like I could be a bit more considerate of it, but I didn't enjoy it.
My default has always been I wanted to try to be a better manager in that moment than the guys who managed me. Like that. Mm-hmm. That's always been my calculus. And not saying that they failed, but to your point, as I got older, I realized what I didn't get. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I felt like I always wanted to be that. When it got really frustrating when it never stopped. And then I start, like, rep after rep of this, crying thing. And when none of what I was saying, none of the considerations I was giving were stopping it, because ultimately I wanted that to stop. Okay, I hear you. I'm here for you. I'm present. I understand that this is emotional, but at a certain point, this ain't going to work. We can't do this. You have to figure out your feelings outside of here and listen to the feedback and work through whatever this is going to be. Because I started to feel like it was disrespectful at a certain point. And, I remember you and I talking about, I'd check in with Corey and be like, hey, is so-and-so always crying in your office? Because I thought it was just me.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, bro. And,
Yeah, feedback tends to be a challenge in general, I'm starting to find. And in my universe, like specifically at my agency, we are in the middle of our performance review cycle, which at most agencies, you do them because maybe you have to, but you don't do it. It might be attached to your performance or to your raise or to a bonus, but the practice itself has not really been, like, I guess, flushed out to the benefit of both the manager and the employee. I've been working really hard at my agency just because I have a passion for talent, and I think it's important specifically for creatives to receive feedback, because the work doesn't get better unless it's pressure tested. Now, don't get me wrong, I've had my fair share of terrible creative directors who could not give feedback without throwing a chair. But, like, I'm curious about how you manage, or how you talked about your kids, but like I'm finding that the young folks today are somehow attaching their personal like value to the job that they have. And like at my big age, I am trying to divorce my personal self from this like role that I play in the organization. What's that like for you right now at this big age?
Yeah, that is true. I find that too. There is, I hear the language, bring your whole self to work. And I think that we inherently knew, at least our generation, I think we inherently knew that that's not a thing. And I think that there's an expectation, and companies, push the idea wanting to sell a culture, and many of them do it well. My current agency has a great culture, and they work at it really hard. But then you're going to always have people who struggle with the idea of bringing their whole self, because if you take on that as a thing, you're inevitably going to encounter things that, in aspects of all of your complexity, something ain't gonna work, because this is this is a capitalistic organization. Like, it's a money making organization, and not all of the things that we deal with emotionally and personally are built to consider that this thing has got to keep going. And so, yeah, I encounter that on a regular basis, but it's in direct contrast to what we naturally do in our generation. But I navigate it case per case. Some of them, yeah.
So our industry is changing every day. I think we all feel that. Business models are changing. More and more clients are going to more project-based kind of, relationships with agencies, which makes it harder to hire and fill out a employee roster. And so, I feel like everybody in our age group, a lot of people are talking about the pivot. What happens? Like, will we get a chance to actually retire from this industry, or will we be forced out early? And are you starting to do that geometry and kind of try to figure out like what might be the next thing, because this might not be here for us?
Yeah, 100%. I've been doing that geometry, trigonometry, calculus, all of that, trying to figure out what it's going to be. The thing that, I don't know if it brings me solace, but it has changed the way I think about it, is that AI is doing that to everybody. So it's not even me trying to like figure out, oh, wow, as a creative, what am I going to do? No, as an everybody, as an anybody,
As a sentient being.
Yeah, as a sentient being, AI is coming forward. So the thing that actually it doesn't give me solace, but it's given me something to learn, something more to something tangible to kind of engage with and start to feel like, okay, I'm still in the learning and development process, and it's relatively new. So it's not as if there's a generation who's, so far ahead of me. Of course they're ahead of me, because they're just, the way they move is more naturally aligned with it, but and how they communicate. But it's invigorated me. I don't know if it's if that's reliable, but yeah, I've been talking about it. I don't know what it is though, so I can't answer that.
It's funny. When we were at SDub and working on AT&T, I got a chance to go to a bunch of tech conventions. And one of the things I saw going to tech conventions, because these kids will show with these amazing apps and all this stuff, and they were looking for angel investors, and like a good 80% of them didn't know how to craft the narrative to sell the thing that they had. And I remember my mom, I was like, they need some creative direction. They need this skill set that we do and use all the time to sell campaigns. They could be using that. And it's like, you team up with one of those guys and start getting that right. That's muddy. So it's funny, the way I'm looking at things now is like, I keep thinking about our skill sets. Like, what do they transfer? What do they do? Like, people pitch TV shows all the time, right? Like, it's a very similar thing. Movie ideas, like, it's a lot of things that are very similar that I think we already have the skill set built in. We just got to take the time out to kind of see where it translates to.
And I think that's where we always tend to fall short there, right? Is taking the time to actually propel into the next thing. Because every time a quote unquote new technology shows up, it does over index in Black and brown communities. Like, when the internet came, we were the first on there. When it moved to mobile, right, everybody was on their phone because we couldn't afford a laptop or a desktop. So we were in that mobile space. AI, I'm acutely paying attention to it as well. And you see all of like this content that they're building. It's a little bit blackface with these Black women. I don't know if you've seen it. Yeah, it's really pissing me off, but we won't go there.
Well, now every time I lean into any Black AI content, I have to ask who created it.
Right? Because you did send me that really funny one. Remember that funny one?
Remember the one we were laughing at, Fat Fellas? Like, that's a white dude. And I was like,
no!
That's a white dude.
See, and that's the part that's just kind of disparaging, is like how they utilize us to go there. But I do wholeheartedly believe that we have all the skill sets to propel us into the future. And then just to kind of decide what that looks like. And then having 25 plus years of this foundational marketing and creative expertise, I think will only move us there. But if we get complacent and comfortable, because you do get to a certain level and the salary is great, and they gave you those 3 little letters that go to the front, and you got little minions that do all the heavy lifting for you now. So it can be tough, but I do know that I'm hoping that we're all feeling a second wind soon to kind of see where it goes.
And I think it's also with collaborating with other people, reaching out, picking up the phone,
Yeah, that's always a huge one. I feel like too, Corey, as long as we have an opportunity or can identify a story that needs to be told better, as long as there's a place for us to like physically be in front of someone and kind of like have that conversation unfold in a personal way. When it's that, if that goes away, it might get a little challenging. But as long as this is a people business and it requires you at some point to be with someone and have them walk away understanding that, okay, they understand my problem personally, they understand my business problem. You know what I mean? And so, and then also, Rebecca, the continual learning and being able to incorporate into those conversations with those people, the new, the now, the next, and have those things be connected to culture. Because certainly as when it comes to Black people, that's the one thing that we will, from my estimation, always have. What is it from us culturally that will be leveraged next time? And so really, it's like, as long as we are aware of what we are culturally creating, the next and the new that we're doing, it's just a matter of time that it's going to be, exercised and capitalized on. And so that creates opportunity for us for sure. And at least in that regard.
What about this next generation of talent? We've been promised this HBCU pipeline to get more Black people in the industry for my entire career, and it's never happened, right?
You put it that way, jeez.
Being an alum of Howard, do you have any advice for like that next generation that's coming up? Or are there any things that you see that you think could help fix this problem?
Well, for one, I feel so at fault whenever that conversation comes up. I feel like I've really failed a whole lot of people because I haven't been back to Howard. I haven't been like, getting in asses like, look, this has got to be better. Hey, look, study this. Hey, look, put your work beside this. Look, here are the new and next and cool things. And they look just like what you're doing naturally. Pay attention to that. Understand that, and so that really that's what it requires. That type of pressure being put on and that type of guidance and mentorship being applied. And I just don't know if we're not creating it yet, it's not going to be there. Also, I don't think kids are ready until grad school. I just don't think undergrad programs are going to en masse be putting out industry ready people, just because it just requires a lot more of a type of rigor and collaboration than most undergrad aged kids are.
Well, and the ones who actually figure it out, which I would say are some of these content creators with millions of views, like they're entrepreneurs. They are not built to walk into an agency. These are entrepreneurs now.
And
they're
they
not
need college. Like,
they're not answering to anybody, and they sure as hell don't want to collaborate. So,
yeah.
Cool. Well, where can people find you if they want to reach out and follow up?
Wow. You can find me at my work email. I don't even have my website up. I'm working on that right now. But you can definitely get in contact with me at sbonds@barkleyOKRP.com. I'm happy to talk and kick it.
All right, kids, y'all heard it here first. When they start blowing up your,
I know, right? LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. There you go. Say it, boss.
LinkedIn. There we go.
And may this be the beginning of your give back tour. And maybe make yourself available at Howard or Hampton. I'm sure there's
reason in the season for everything. So
yeah, absolutely.
Cool, bro.
Well, as always, I think we have made it to time. So we want to thank you very much for joining us for another episode of the Invisible Soldiers podcast. Everybody, please do us a favor. Subscribe anywhere you can listen to podcasts. And hit the button and subscribe. And again, Sam, thank you for your time. Corey, always a pleasure. And we're out.
Peace.
Thanks, y'all.